and how do we get there. But I think something that I'd personally like to do is have some amateur fighters on and do amateur fight profiles, kind of shine a light on these guys, how the pandemic has affected their preparations and, you know, what they hope to do in their MMA career.
That's my plan. But the only thing is, though, I'm planning on keeping this at a 3-person maximum, 2-person minimum potty. I think once you get 4 voices in there, and there are 4 voices people don't understand, it becomes difficult for people to distinguish. So just putting that out there, you know, prior to any amateur members coming on the potty.
Someone's going to have to make way. Well, we're all performing for the next 30 minutes.
Yeah. But what I was going to say, though, is I am going to get some guys from the UFC on in the next few months. I'm going to get a Lauren Sanko on, for example. The Cuban
Not
missile.
if you call her Lauren Sanko, because her name is Laura. I think you're going to struggle to get her on
like
in that case.
Man. That's the classic negging. She'll want to come on and tell you her name is Laura when I call her Lauren.
I think you're right, Don. I think a 3-person maximum, even if you've got a guest. So I think, if you're the intelligent, dignified, and full of integrity, you'll be the one to step back and let me and Burgers take this rocket to the moon.
Hey, I'm not going to be slandered on my own podcast, but, you know, you're hosting this one, so. But anyway, yeah.
Burgers are confusing.
In the meanwhile, let's get our teeth into into what were we on? We were on a bit of Aljo versus the other guy.
Piotr Yan. But let's call it what it is. This half of the podcast, this is the gossip section. This is the agony.
Okay. Well, look, we're still on fights, though. We're still on stuff that happened this past weekend, as Vaughn would say. Let's go Dom Cruz. The interview, he got on there with Joe Rogan. He had just won a split decision, which is against a guy not many people know, which is a little bit embarrassing in a way.
And who's unranked.
Because he's a former champ, and he should be going in there and destroying that guy as much as Dominic Cruz can destroy a guy. You know, he should be the shit 10-8 the fuck out of him in that 3rd round.
Dominating, as Dom would call it.
But he decimated there last night, or the other night, and it wasn't. Anyway, he got on the mic and started talking shit, and Brendan, you know the story, so give it to us.
Yeah, well, first off, in Casey Kenny's defense, up-and-coming fighter with a lot of talent. But yeah, what we're here to talk about is Dom Cruz taking the mic, taking the opportunity, and as Joe Rogan called it, getting political. He called out Hans Mollenkamp, and you know it's a recognizable name. His grin has been all over my Instagram for, I would say, 18 months, and I just assumed he was some sort of kickboxing coach because he was in everybody's Instagram and he was kicking cups out of their hand and kicking food out of their hand. But as it turns out, he apparently manages some of the fighter sponsorship contracts with Monster Energy, and he was using that kind of position of power to coerce these guys into taking photos and videos they didn't want to take. Hans Mollenkamp has been Me Too'd effectively. Don's got up there and put him in, you know, some poorly esteemed company. Darragh, what's your take? Give us more details.
I don't he did essentially get political, and I'm sure a lot of the ins and outs of it are not open for to not like out there for a lot of us. I'm sure there's more to it than meets the eye, but yeah, I don't know, and I wonder did Dominic's performance in the fight affect, like, was it a planned thing, or was it, man, I'm pissed off about how things are going, I'm gonna unleash on this guy kind of thing? I mean, the fight itself was, I don't want to say far from impressive. He looked good in some parts, but so did the other guy. I mean, it's hard to see where Dom Cruz goes from here, but I think I will say, as an aside from the Hans Mollenkamp situation, is like, at what point does Dom Cruz decide, right, I'm an intelligent guy in MMA, high-profile guy, I'm just going to focus on my commentating, my analysis, and possibly podcasting here or there, getting on some big shows. It seems like that's the more viable move from here. Like, when you're getting split decisions with guys, it's like, do you see Dom winning a title or even challenging for a title? Do you see him in a title fight?
I'll go first. I'll say in Dom Cruz's defense, he's a hell of a competitor. He doesn't want to step down, and you know that rings true for most champions. You know, how many ex-champions step away gracefully? I don't know. He's in there, and he still feels like there's fighting the dog. And luckily for Dom, the damage he's received over the years hasn't been to his brain. It's been to his knees, his ankles, and just about everything that's attaching him to the ground. So I think he still has a chance to put up some numbers in that division. I think, you know, Casey Kenny is probably the best unranked guy at bantamweight, and Dom was in there with Henry Cejudo, and although he got finished, he didn't look like he didn't belong in there. I'd like to see him climb the ranks and maybe fight some of those top guys. I'd like to see how his style matches up with Aljo in this day and age. I'd like to see him fight Corey Sanderhagen.
I disagree with all that. I think if he loses to a couple of those guys, he's just kind of looking silly. And it's going to be hard for him to get on the mic after, say he goes 0-3, which is a real possibility, and start saying what guys should be doing in the cage as he's commentating. Because they're going to turn around and say, Dom, you're after getting your ass whooped. What can you possibly tell me, a winning fighter, about winning a fight? So if you look at DC, who's after having a nice post-fight career, he stepped away after getting beaten by Stipe. Say he'd stuck around. I'm not saying he would have gotten beaten by those other guys. Say Derek Lewis had knocked him out, and then a couple of guys lower down the ranks had also beaten him. You wouldn't have as much respect for DC, and it's just the way it goes. A guy who's after getting beaten on multiple occasions, he's going to find it hard to go in there and command respect. And for that reason, Dom should most certainly step away at this point.
You're right, Don. The only guys who should do analysis are the undefeated fighters, like Paul Felder. Never lost a round.
That's not my point, though. I'm saying if you're a well-respected champion and you're trying to make a post-fight career, maybe it's best to step away as a well-respected champion, because you don't need those extra paychecks. Dom doesn't need them. He's got that career lined up, so maybe make sure of his post-fight career before trying to get those extra couple of wins out, you know?
Yeah, maybe. I don't disagree with stepping away at the top, but the idea that, you know, you're going to be less respected by your peers, I don't know. It's working pretty well for Paul Felder, and as we saw, DC lost 2 of his 3 fights with Stipe after going 0-2 against John Jones. And people are still pretty happy to have him there, even though, you know, the pinnacle of his career didn't turn out, you know, to be all we hoped it would be.
But
so,
can we just look at that Paul Felder case, actually? How did he end up as just like a sort of a, not journeyman, but he was never really a top 5 lightweight. He was never a notable guy. And all of a sudden, he's a UFC commentator. Like, there's 100 other guys like Paul Felder. So how did he end up in that role, I wonder?
See, I think a big thing with that, I would say, first and foremost, is English. Man speaks English, and he speaks English very well. That's a very basic thing that a lot of UFC fighters do not have, it has to be said, at the top level. True. Like, and he's American as well. And also, he was never the best, but he was a solid competitor. And I believe the difference between him and a Dom Cruz is Paul Felder kind of plays that role as, I'm the tough guy that will take any fight, and I'm in a dogfight. You know, he's not like. Whereas what might be damaging to Dominic's reputation if he does continue to do fights is this guy was the champ, whereas Paul Felder never had that height to drop from. Do you know what I mean? It's not to be dissing Paul Felder. Paul Felder is a great fighter, and he's a brilliant analyst. Like, you know, it's like, obviously I'm sure he first of all probably just went out and went for it. You know, just decided I'm going to go for it. I'm going to try it out. Was good at it. There's a lot to be said for that. Like, you know.
Yeah.
I hear great fighter and brilliant analyst, and I feel like Don's going to line up another one of those. I disagree with everything you just said. But no, it's an interesting case study. You know, what makes a good analyst. And Don said there's maybe 100 guys like that, but I'm not so sure. And that's why you end up with guys like Mike the Maverick Chiesa is now getting his shot behind the mic.
Yeah,
it seems like if you're reasonably well spoken and, you know, you're American and you're a civil individual, you're going to get a shot on that mic. And I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that we don't see, like those, you know, like when the UFC was on Fox TV and they had those late night shows. I'm sure there's still some of that we don't get the opportunity to see, where, you know, Mike Chiesa and Paul Felder have maybe put in some good shifts, and that's what gets them the nod. Maybe, you know, going forward, a guy like Kamaru Usman might be the guy. But I think in Dom Cruz's case, he was a company man who was plagued with injuries, and they gave him the opportunity for that reason. But that call out, to bring it full circle, that call out on Hans Molenkamp, it'll be interesting to see what comes of that and how these other UFC fighters respond. I know Dana had gone bad on Hans before. I know Derek Lewis didn't want to work with Monster Energy also. And, you know, in Dom Cruz's fight, in his picture with Hans, you know, Hans throws the hand around him, and Dom Cruz, you know, gives him a little key eye. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of this.
Anyway, speaking of commentators, man, Dan Hardy's been let go. I'm sure you've seen it. And people were saying, I was actually one of those people, were saying it might be related to the Herb Dean incident. If you remember, Herb Dean, he, as he normally does, I got knocked down and was taking strikes in the ground. And Herb was waiting, I don't know, he was waiting for someone to tell him to stop the fight. Or whatever he was waiting for. He wasn't stopping the fight. The man was dying in the ring. And Dan took off his headset. He ran cage side, and he started shouting at Herb to stop the fight. And then Herb came over to him after to explain his side. They had words, and then wasn't happy after. But seemingly, after my whole spiel there, it's not related to the recent firing of Dan Hardy. I like Dan Hardy, and now he's gone from the UFC, so maybe it's something more innocuous. Maybe it's a bit of a Me Too thing, or.
I mean, look, the Herb Dean thing definitely doesn't help. That's a completely unfounded Me Too accusation, and I'm going to rescind that on Don's behalf. We've no evidence of that. But what we have heard is that the Wrestling Observer have reported that there was some sort of an altercation with a female employee of the UFC. And so who knows what that was related to. Who knows if that's even true. But he's gone now from both the UFC and BT Sport.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, as in, he was with the UFC, and I know he can't really be with BT and not be in UFC's good books, but he's gone from both. So it would appear that BT would be relatively loyal traditionally as a company, and it doesn't appear to be a good thing to be in the Dan Hardy business if they're letting him go. So you'd imagine it has to be something, you know, there's no smoke without fire, I suppose.
Yeah, and I would imagine the Herb Dean incident, it looks very big from when you're looking at it. It's two major guys in the MMA world head to head, like arguing with each other. But at the same time, was it more than a bog standard scuffle, really? Like, it was disagreements that intensified basically at cage side. It's not the sort of thing you want to see a man losing his job over, I don't believe. So it would look to me like there is more to it. Maybe that put him in the bad books with the UFC and with BT Sport, but I don't think that's the be-all and end-all of the situation. There has to be more to it. Now, I'm sure it will come out in time what it is exactly, but it's disappointing. I was always a fan of him. Thought he was a good analyst. I mean, he's especially for BT Sport being a British company. The man fought GSP. He's one of the most esteemed British fighters of all time. He's a solid guy. It was great to have him there, and he knew his stuff. You can, like, there's a lot to be said for a guy knowing about MMA, especially in the early days, which almost it seems like we still are in. There's not many high-level British MMA fighters out there that are going to have enough knowledge to give out. Who is there? Him and Bisping, maybe. After that, you're clawing, really, aren't you? It's disappointing to see him go, I would say.
Definitely. But, you know, I feel like there had been maybe some decay in his relationship with the UFC for a while. And maybe some of that's related to his own YouTube page, Full Reptile, where he was trying to do kind of similar content, similar work that he was doing for the UFC and for BT. But, you know, everyone can't eat off that same pie. I know Dan had been using fight clips, and then they had stopped him from doing that. So he was no longer permitted to do that. He essentially was trying to monetize the inside the octagon sessions that he was doing with John Gooden. He was trying to do them for himself. And look, now he can do that all he wants. But it's not going to be with the UFC. It doesn't look like it's going to be with BT Sport, and he's not going to have the benefit of using those clips. So I hope he's, you know, put together a strong enough following that they can, you know, carry him from here on out, potentially on the Patreon. But
Stormzy said, "Big for your boots," you know.
Maybe he was.
Yeah, he should have told that company line a little bit more. And Dan seems to be an independent spirit. But you know what that gets in the UFC? It gets you your P45. So he has, he look, it's a bit late to say it now, but what DC does, what Joe Rogan, what Michael Bisping, people say these guys told a company line. But if they want their job and their big paychecks, that's what you got to do.
Yeah, for sure. I think that really...
While I'm at it, I wanted to pull up a clip of Deontay Wilder that I saw there yesterday. I wonder if I have screen sharing privileges here.
I made you the host.
Great. Okay, I'm just going to share this screen and I want you to tell me what you think of this. Let's see if we can get sound on it as well. Oh, sugar. Okay, yeah. So that's the clip I wanted to share. So Deontay Wilder, he was on a television show, and they said punch this mascot. Obviously, thought he was going to give him like a light jab or something, but he lined up a straight right. He punched it right in the jaw, the mascot, and the guy inside the mascot, he broke his jaw, he broke an orbital, and he got concussed obviously from this punch.
Well, don't tell a guy like Deontay Wilder to just punch this guy. Yeah. Deontay Wilder is an animal. That's a hand that has put many a man to sleep. That's a hand that's knocked out Luis Ortiz after many rounds of losing. Don't say that to that guy. He's gonna want to look good in front of the cameras. He put his fist through it. You can see he turns the hips and everything. The power went through. You're running the risk. Like, you're running the risk. Don't try it. Like, Deontay Wilder is an animal. Losing to Tyson Fury or not, that man is a killer. He doesn't see it. Deontay Wilder's never in his life thrown a light punch. He doesn't believe in light punches. Don't try that. Don't try that stuff.
I'm absolutely speechless. It's the way that he lands that clean punch, and you know, it's just a normal day in the life. He looks at the camera like, was that good? Do we need a second take?
Laughing and joking.
He sent that man to the hospital, and he's wondering, do they need a second take? And I think this really lines up with the previous story about what it takes to be an analyst. There aren't 100 civilized guys out there who can be an analyst. Like, on the evidence of that alone, you have to say Deontay Wilder is just not the full shilling.
I'm going to pull it up while you're speaking. Just stay going there. I'm just going to pull this up again.
Man, I love the idea of, like, did he feel the jaw crack on his knuckles? Did he feel the orbital bone break? Like, he must. It's not like he surely had to feel the resistance of a human face at some stage.
What I think happened is, and I'm completely serious here, I think he thought that was a large toy. I don't think Deontay Wilder realised that there was a man inside of that suit. I think he thought that was an animated, maybe an electronic or something toy. And that's why he punched so hard. I think he just doesn't realize there's a man there.
You know what? He doesn't realize that is hollow. He thinks that if he's being asked to punch someone, they're suitably protected. You know? He thinks the onus is on the company here. And
I think he's right. The onus is on them. You don't send the man out to get punched by Deontay Wilder and not have him tacked out.
Look, that man is covering his head. He's after seeing a death. Look at the woman behind them.
No! Look at the way the toy brings up his hands just before the shot lands, like he knows this is a bad idea.
It's too late.
Can that man even see out through that mask? Like, what does he think in that last minute?
He's taking a blind shot from Deontay Wilder.
Deontay doesn't even throw a standing punch. He moves into range like he's hitting the punching bag in D2 and he wants to have the best score of all the lads.
999. Absolute demolishing.
And rotates through.
Like Bruce Lee, he does that as well.
It's like the evil part of me, like the evil part of me is just like, does he enjoy the fact that he's just crushed this man's face? Like, is that killer instinct just so strong in him that it was just pleasurable destroying this man? He had to feel it. He had to feel it.
I'm sticking by my theory that Deontay Wilder did not realise that a man was in there. He thought that was a large toy that was walking around.
Or thought he was well padded. Who's sending a man in to get punched by Deontay Wilder with next to no padding? What are you doing? Like, even the bog standard boxing headgear, like, what's going on?
Man, you know what's most worrying about that whole thing was that if Herb Dean was the referee, he wouldn't even have stopped it.
Oh, man.
That man was intelligently defending himself just by being in the suit.
But there has to be less padding in a suit like that than there would be in like some 16-ounce gloves. Like, if anything, I'd say that's the worst situation to possibly take a punch. There's enough padding.
That's just fabric.
Where Deontay's not worried about breaking his knuckles. Deontay moves into he leaps in, screams to get that extra bit of power, and then on top of all that, the guy can't even see the punch coming, so he doesn't know when it's coming. It just hits him.
Man, when you're looking through that suit, you can vaguely make out that there's someone in the vicinity. But when that fist gets close enough to you, you lose sight of it. About 30 centimeters out, you can no longer see the hand. And that's when he starts to turn away from it. But man, that shot landed clean down the pipe. Like, for a shot like that to hit you and break your jaw and your orbital, man, Deontay Wilder disassembled that man's neurocranium. That's not right. That's not right.
And the thing is, because of the suit, you can't see his head slapping off the ground and bouncing back up. Because you know for sure that happened as well.
Man, that man had to have a terrible day. Like, that man went into work and was like, people telling him, put on this suit that's going to make you look like an absolute fool and stand in front of Deontay Wilder and we're going to let him smash his hardest punch right in your face. That was not a good day for that guy. No, definitely not. Like,
some gypsy put a curse.
I hope he is a good liar and got some compensation out of it, because God almighty, like, broken orbital and jaw, like, get some money there. Man. Get payday. For sure he's getting a payday. 100%.
If he has signed some sort of waiver before he's taken that punch, you know, maybe he had brain damage before it happened. Because anyone who's not preparing for the worst case scenario in that situation,
but you're just doing your due diligence.
Joshua doing that.
Yeah, but I'd like to see how they like explain that to him. How they said to him, Deontay Wilder's going to come in here and land a straight right on you while you're in the suit, or did it just happen naturally? Like, were they having a conversation? Deontay saw this big toy and said, let's see how hard I can punch it. Like, it couldn't have been planned, surely, because someone somewhere would have said, this isn't a good idea.
I can only imagine Conor McGregor on the Conan O'Brien show, and, you know, that hook kick lands, and he puts Conan out.
Yeah, I remember he was saying, I'm getting good at this technique, and then he goes and throws it, and Conan's moving in and out of range, and it comes within inches. But I'm going to pull that up as well, actually. I start typing.
Yeah. While you're pulling that up, here's a little nugget that we didn't discuss beforehand. But did anyone hear what Tim Elliott was saying to his opponent while he was grounding and pounding him?
No.
So apparently Tim Elliott's opponent had some accusations of domestic abuse against him a couple of years ago. So Tim Elliott's got him down. He's got his forearm to his throat. It's ultimate top control. And he's pummeling him, and he starts asking him, you like to beat women, huh? And he's just giving it to him. You
have to respect that. You have to.
You have to respect that. But the guy on bottom's down there, he's like, listen, you don't know the full story. It reminded me of an episode of The Punisher. You know what I mean? Like, Tim Elliott's going to take the back for a second and say, go ahead, tell me the full story.
It reminds me a bit of Conor McGregor. It's only business, actually. Just some guys, you just realize you can't do anything about it, and you beg for mercy.
That's what that is, man.
You realize the guy is not only more skilled than you, but he can legally beat you up. And you know what else? He's angry with you. He wants to hurt you.
Yeah,
that's
for damn sure.
It's a scary situation. But anyway, thanks for bringing in the whole domestic violence thing into a nice little comedy bit we had going there anyway, B.
Yeah, well, You know what? I can't even say anything to that, but I really feel like Tim Elliott needs to be changing his moniker now, you know, just parlay this in some way.
For sure. But the woman protector or something. But yeah, let's pull this shit up. Now it doesn't land, so it's not going to be anywhere near as entertaining as Deontay just launching a right hand. But it's something. So he's pulling off his suit. Conan does not realise that he's about to throw a copper. Like, Conor has his shoes off. Conor's not playing here. You're almost expecting him to take his pants off and have a little pair of tidy whities.
Oh, man, there's
close.
no way he has that distance control to be absolutely sure that doesn't take Conan's head off.
Hopefully we get a slow-mo replay here or something. That was so close.
Oh my God.
But even Conan has the more wherewithal than our man in a tin can. You know what I mean? Put Conan in a suit there and see how comfortable he is with his distance control.
Oh my goodness. Anyway, look, from now on when I pull up clips of MMA fighters punching innocent folk, I want the hit to land. It just wasn't as funny. Well,
look, for that we need look no further than Uriah Hall, who just has a bad habit of beating up his amateur sparring partners, and
really?
we can find whole catalogs of video on that I'm sure our 12 listeners will love. But yeah, man, I didn't mean to bring in domestic abuse, and but you know that guy who was getting bet up on bottom, he deserved it a little bit, and Tim Elliott is now he's the protector.
Yeah, but man, he may get in there with Amanda Nunes, someone who loves beating up women, and see who the real champ is. But well, we're on the topic of Conor McGregor and his hook kicks. He's no longer involved with Proper 12, man. So he's been bought out.
Is that official? Because I'd heard rumors.
It's official. Sure I'm fairly sure that the company, the people who bought him out already had something like 48%, something ridiculous like 48% shares. Finally got that 51%, and he's effectively bought out, obviously. And
okay, so he's still part.
From there, he's still part. He's still got a lot of shares, I believe, but he's no longer in control. He's no longer majority shareholder. So it ultimately where the company goes from here is not up to him. I do believe he still has a lot of shares, though.
I wasn't really aware of what the situation was to begin with, whether or not he was majority shareholder, whether or not he was kind of just being attached to the brand with a significant holding. But that's interesting. But I'm hearing 100 million being thrown around as a potential figure, and you've just got to give it up to the man who, you know, with all the L's he's taken a hell of a lot of W's as well.
So we can see here what percentage of Proper 12 does McGregor own. And so it's a value, this is now the 23rd of January 2021. So that's 2 months ago nearly at this stage. But
exactly. See there where they say Airborne Spirits owns 51%. Airborne Spirits is basically Conor McGregor, I believe. Him and, I don't want to say Audie Tar, but there was somebody that I think it's a known name he set up with that person. They were the owners of Proper 12, and I think it's just been bought out. I think he could even be 49% shareholder effectively at the minute. But The weird thing is, like, you ever hear those cases where poor people win the lottery and win millions and then eventually end up broke because they've never had money and don't understand how to utilize it? That could have, like, it would be borderline impossible, you would say, like.
Just that, yeah, so he was at 51% ownership as of the 23rd of January. And now that's been bought out by tequila giant Jose Curvo. And its parent company, Beckles. So, yeah, there he is there. Yeah. The company's valued €200 million and it values Proper 12 at 310 million. So, McGregor and Attar reportedly held an 8% stake in the company when it was founded, with Beckel buying in from the start with a 20% stake. The finalised sales put McGregor's earnings to another level. So yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, it sounds like he might have been bought out in his entirety then, because the 100 million figure being thrown around would be a substantial amount of the overall value of the company.
Now, this
Brendan,
is a
I don't know
long...
if that 100 million has got to do with the actual shares, that maybe just as a buyout, it might be so that they can get that 51% what they need to run the company. I'm not too sure how it works, but
Perhaps.
if he I'm sure he's going to keep some shares. Like, he doesn't want to end up in a situation where he's given this amount of money and that's it, like, work with that. You don't want to end up like a Floyd Mayweather, where there's rumors of you having massive tax like things need to be taken out and you're not paying it and you're fighting for more money. He doesn't want that situation to arise and end up looking for an apprenticeship in plumbing again. But just it's incredibly unlikely, but I'm sure basically he wants to hold on to some shares in that company.
So this is massive speculation here. But is there anything to be said for the fact that McGregor lost so decisively to Dustin Poirier? And he's going to say a lot of that was because he wasn't active in the ring. He had more out of the ring commitments. So he had his proper 12, he had his clothing, he had all this thing. So he said after that fight, he said, you know what? Fuck proper 12. I'm going to forget about all this stuff until I'm done with fighting. And then I'll have a business ventures. And he said, I'm going to try and find a buyer for the rest of my company here. And
if he said that he's the worst businessman in the history of business, why would you sell out this massive company that you're a part of and give ownership up to somebody else when you could go in and lose more fights and eventually have to retire and then have nothing? It just doesn't make sense.
Here's the thing. Maybe Conor's afraid that, you know, you continue to lose those fights, he might actually take value out of the company. You know, I don't know how long Proper 12 exists outside of Conor at his peak. We don't know if it'll take off in a way that the George Foreman grill took off or whatever the case may be. There's a lot of hot takes flying around. Maybe Conor's preparing some out-of-court settlements.
Conor McGregor, as part of Proper 12 or not, financially will never ever take his name away from it. So that's the other issue. It's you're never going to associate Proper 12 with anybody other than Conor McGregor, even if he has 1% ownership in it. It's so I don't. It's hard to know. It just maybe, to be honest, it looks, if we look at the stats, they start Beckles or whoever they are. They start off with a 20% ownership, kept pushing. I think it's just basically a business strategy from them. Buy Conor McGregor out. Maybe Conor McGregor agrees with it because maybe they have a better structure. Obviously, they're a massive tequila-based company. They can take Proper 12 to new heights, maybe expand its horizons, bring it to different continents even, or increase their supply to different continents. I'm sure maybe, I think it's basically a business thing. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is more to it. But
yeah,
it's hot takes for sure.
Now, this isn't something that I like to say, but as you said, McGregor doesn't really come from money. So maybe he has that massive yacht there, and his spending is beyond the level where just the passive income from Proper 12 and his bit of fighting is going to maintain his living. Like, he's got 100 million worth of yacht. He's got like a full team who have to look after that yacht. That all takes money. And maybe he wants that short-term money, and he thinks that in 2 or 3 years down the line, he can start up another business, and his other business will be as successful as Proper 12, and he can sell it again, and so on and so forth. Which would be, in my opinion, the wrong take. I think he's only ever going to get one Proper 12, and he should be hanging on to it when he has the chance to. This is his chance to actually make it big, to have that generational wealth he was talking about. Because McGregor Fast, it's not going to do that for him. There's not going to be a $300 million valuation of McGregor Fast anytime soon, if ever. So this is his chance, and it looks like maybe he's after doing away with it by that sale.
I'm interested. I'm extremely interested to see how this plays out, because hopefully, you know, in the next 3 months, we get some more information, some more insight into why he's made this business decision and what it might mean for his future. Yeah, a lot of hot takes floating around, but I suppose we can only go on what little tabloid journalism we've been shown.
The thing is, as well with McGregor, he's not that old. He's at a stage where, like, not that, like, the money he has is retirement type money if you manage it well. But I don't know if McGregor has the financial knowledge that he will manage it well. That's why I don't like thought of a scenario where that happens, where he has these huge valued assets that he has to pay tax on. He's losing money on, trying to keep his houses, trying to keep his yachts, and eventually the money just disappears. He's paying a lot of people. He's got maids. He's got people working for McGregor Fast. He's got people working for Proper 12. It depends. Maybe it was a good financial decision that he let this major tequila-based company take over Proper 12 and try to bring it to new heights while he maintains a lot of shares, and then just let that passive income come in. I'm sure there's a good bit of money with that passive income, but it's a strange situation. I agree with you two, especially you, Brendan, like that. It's like, it remains to be seen. It's like more information will have to come to light as to why he made this decision for us to even speculate on his possible future, where the money is.
Burgers, I appreciate your resistance to speculation. Well, I think you have to recall, this is the No Knowledge podcast. What we do here is hot takes and lack of knowledge. So I think we're within the scope of this podcast to spend 30 seconds reading an article and then spend 10 minutes talking about our thoughts on it. I think that's what we're about here at the NKP studios.
Makes sense.
But yeah,
I need to get with the program, man.
I'm just going to reiterate it. I think McGregor, he's asking, if it is what he says it is, I think the wise thing is to keep your multi-million-dollar company and keep the money coming in, because these one-time payments, they're grand when you get them, but if you don't have money coming in, what you have is going out very, very quickly. You have to keep earning to have money. Simple as that.
I heard from a little birdie through the grapevine, don't quote me on this, but he's going to dump it all into GameStop. I don't know. He still thinks the gamma squeeze is on the way, and he's trying to get those tendies. So there's multiple possibilities here. Other people said he was following the crypto creator's Instagram page, and he's gonna dump that cash into non-fungible tokens. So we'll see what happens. But one thing's for damn sure, this episode of the podcast isn't going to say MMA analysts Benny and Darragh. It's going to firmly be business analysts. And
well, at this point, I think we've done a solid 40, maybe 50 minutes on just this episode alone, and Zoom hasn't called us up. So I think it's time, boys.
Yeah, why not, man? Why the hell not? I'm trying to finish on a positive note and parlay, what Tim Elliott said.
I'm just after actually on terms of positive notes. I'm just for pulling up an article here that says the guy that Deontay Wilder lambasted with a punch 3 months ago is now actually he's recovered. He's back walking again, and his jaw he's able to eat. So on that happy note, maybe it's time to call it.
Hold on, I'm talking there, brother.
Yeah.
So I respect what Tim Elliott did in relation to International Women's Day. I think that was a powerful move. And on that note, Darragh, would you like to give your closing thoughts?
Closing thoughts. A lot to be looking forward to in the world of MMA and business. Keep an eye on McGregor's fortune. It may be diminishing, it may be not. We don't really have a clue. I'll leave it there.
Okay, just one last thing from me. If any of you SBG boys, you 16, 17-year-olds who are preparing McGregor for his next fight happen to see this, tell him if he wants a financial advisor, you got one right here, baby. I've got a business degree, which is agriculture, but that notwithstanding, it is actually a business degree. And on top of that, I have a crypto page on Instagram. So basically, it's all under one roof, your investments. Just call me up. And if you want someone to manage that 200 million you're after getting, I'm the guy.
And let's not forget your experience with Tombe Capital Partners.
Yeah, that too. A trading company.
Lest we forget. And while we're keeping an eye on McGregor's fortune, keep an eye on the NKP. Keep an eye on the No Knowledge podcast. Much like GameStop, it could head to the moon, or some dumbasses could end up, embarrassed. So, yeah.
But someday soon, we're going live. I'm going to my own Instagram page. I'm going to tell people we're here and we're creating content. And if you want to stop by and give it a listen, do that.
And shortly after that, we parlay into the merch.
Yeah.
I don't want to shout out any other podcasts and give them, increased traffic from all our listeners. But I've been hearing some very early launched merch, and
but I was thinking more.
Don't come at me with merch until your episodes are in the double digits.
I'm not thinking we're going to do hoodies or t-shirts. I know that our fans, my 12 subscribers, they're MMA guys. They're going to want some geese. So I'm thinking we've got the loft, the shout out to the loft where the whole thing kind of got a bit of legs back in the day on the front. And we got the big NKP on the back. And then on the sleeve, you got little Benny, Don, and Burgers. Just the faces, like a little cartoon face. And that's going to be our little rash guard.
And on the other side, we have a URL that leads directly to the Patreon. And, if you like what we're doing here and you'd buy us a pint or the price of a cup of coffee, you can donate that to the Patreon.
Yeah. And look, if you want to, donate before that day comes, just comment on our page. And
I've got Revolut.
Yeah, I've got Revolut. I'll tell you my IBAN and we can sort it out.
You can have my BIC.
Yeah, so yeah, that's what's sorted for today. Thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll catch you later.